What happens when Hollywood's most beloved underdog meets daytime television's most controversial host? In just 23 seconds, one heated exchange would turn a routine publicity appearance into television chaos, exposing the ugly truth about what really goes on behind the cameras of America's most watched talk show. This is the exclusive inside story of how Sylvester Stallone went from welcome guest to persona non grata faster than you can say Rocky Balboa. Last night's explosive confrontation on The View left viewers stunned and the entertainment industry buzzing. What started as a simple interview about Stallone's latest project quickly spiraled into a verbal battlefield that would end with security escorting the legendary actor off the set. But the real story isn't what you saw on your television screens. It's what happened in those crucial moments leading up to the meltdown, when professional courtesy gave way to personal attacks and career assassination attempts. The morning began like any other at The View's Manhattan studio. Sylvester Stallone, dressed in a sharp navy suit and looking every bit the seasoned professional, sat comfortably in the guest chair as makeup artists applied final touches. The 77-year-old actor seemed relaxed, even jovial, as he chatted with production assistants about his upcoming film projects. He had done this dance hundreds of times before, promoting movies on talk shows across the country. Today was supposed to be different, though. Today was supposed to be easy. Joy Behar, the show's most outspoken co-host, shuffled her notes at the main desk while glancing occasionally at her guest. There was something in her expression, a slight tightening around the eyes, that suggested this interview might not go according to script. The other panel members, Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Haynes, Sunny Hostin, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, took their positions as the countdown to live television began. "Good morning and welcome to The View," Whoopi announced with her trademark gravelly voice as the cameras rolled. "We're here with the one and only Sylvester Stallone, and boy do we have some questions for you today." Stallone flashed his famous crooked grin and waved to the audience. "Thanks for having me, ladies. It's always a pleasure to be here with you beautiful women." The audience erupted in cheers and applause, but Joy's expression remained stone-faced. She waited for the noise to die down before jumping straight into her first question, bypassing the usual pleasantries entirely. "Sylvester, let's talk about your recent comments regarding the current political climate," Joy said, her tone sharp and accusatory. "You've been pretty vocal about your support for certain policies that, frankly, many of our viewers find troubling." The smile on Stallone's face flickered slightly, but he maintained his composure. "Well, Joy, I think it's important for people to have open discussions about different viewpoints. That's what makes America great, right? The ability to disagree respectfully." "Respectfully?" Joy scoffed, leaning forward aggressively. "Is it respectful when your comments potentially harm marginalized communities? When you use your platform to spread ideas that could genuinely hurt people?" Whoopi shifted uncomfortably in her seat, clearly not expecting the interview to take such a confrontational turn so quickly. Sarah Haynes looked between her co-hosts with growing concern, while Sunny Hostin began shuffling through her own notes, perhaps preparing to jump into the fray. Stallone's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly, but his voice remained calm. "Joy, I think you might be mischaracterizing what I've said. I've always believed in treating people with dignity and respect, regardless of their background or beliefs. My comments were about policy, not about targeting any specific group of people." "Oh, please," Joy interrupted, her voice rising. "Don't try to walk back your statements now that you're sitting here. We have the quotes, Sylvester. We know exactly what you said and what you meant by it." The tension in the studio was now palpable. Audience members exchanged glances, sensing that something was going very wrong with what should have been a light-hearted celebrity interview. The camera operators continued rolling, capturing every uncomfortable moment as the confrontation escalated. Alyssa Farah Griffin finally spoke up, her voice measured and diplomatic. "I think what Joy is trying to say is that words have consequences, especially when they come from someone with your level of influence. Perhaps we could discuss how celebrities can be more mindful of their impact?" Stallone nodded appreciatively at Alyssa's attempt to steer the conversation in a more constructive direction. "Absolutely, Alyssa. That's exactly the kind of thoughtful dialogue we should be having. I've spent my entire career trying to inspire people through stories of perseverance and overcoming obstacles. The last thing I'd ever want is for my words to be twisted into something harmful." But Joy wasn't finished. In fact, she seemed to interpret Stallone's reasonable response as weakness, an opening to press her attack even harder. "Twisted?" she practically shouted. "Nobody twisted anything, Sylvester. You said what you said, and now you're sitting here trying to play the victim. It's actually pretty pathetic for someone who's made a career playing tough guys." The audience gasped audibly at Joy's personal attack, Even her fellow co-hosts looked shocked at the venom in her voice. Whoopi's eyes widened as she realized the interview was spinning completely out of control. Stallone's famous composure finally began to crack. His hands, resting on the arms of his chair, tightened into fists. His voice, when he spoke, carried a dangerous edge that millions of moviegoers had heard in countless films. Now hold on just a minute, Joy. I came here to talk about my work, to connect with your audience about projects I'm passionate about. I didn't come here to be ambushed with gotcha questions and personal insults. Ambushed? Joy laughed mockingly. This is journalism, Sylvester. Maybe you're just not used to people asking you real questions instead of lobbing softball compliments your way. Sarah Haynes finally found her voice, attempting to de-escalate the situation. Maybe we should take a quick break and come back to discuss Sylvester's new movie project. I think our viewers would really love to hear about that. But Stallone was no longer interested in talking about movies. The legendary actor, who had built his reputation on playing characters who stood up to bullies, was not about to back down from this confrontation. You know what, Joy? You want to talk about real journalism? Real journalism involves asking tough questions with respect and professionalism. What you're doing right now isn't journalism. It's character assassination disguised as an interview. Joy's face flushed red with anger. Character assassination? I'm asking you to take responsibility for your own words. If you can't handle basic accountability, maybe you shouldn't be making political statements in the first place. Sunny Hostin, who had remained silent throughout most of the exchange, finally decided to intervene. I think we all need to take a step back here. This conversation is getting unnecessarily heated, and I don't think it's serving anyone well, especially our viewers who tuned in to learn about entertainment. But her diplomatic words fell on deaf ears. Joy and Stallone were now locked in a battle of wills, each determined not to be the first to back down. The studio audience sat in stunned silence, witnessing what would surely become one of the most talked about moments in daytime television history. Whoopi Goldberg, desperate to regain control of her show, raised her voice above the growing tension. Okay, everybody just calm down for a second. This is getting way too intense, and we need to remember we're on live television here. But Joy Behar was beyond reasoning. Something about Stallone's presence, his calm demeanor in the face of her attacks, seemed to fuel her rage even more. She leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms, a smug expression replacing her earlier anger. You know what I think, Sylvester? I think you're just another privileged Hollywood elite who can't handle being challenged. You're so used to people kissing your feet that you don't know how to respond when someone calls you out on your nonsense. The audience began murmuring among themselves, clearly uncomfortable with the hostile atmosphere that had taken over the studio. Several people could be heard expressing their disapproval of Joy's behavior, but the cameras kept rolling. Stallone shook his head slowly, his famous patience finally wearing thin. Joy, I've been in this business for over 50 years. I've faced critics, tough directors, and hostile press before. But what you're doing right now isn't criticism. It's just plain mean-spirited. Mean-spirited? Joy shot back, her voice dripping with sarcasm. What's mean-spirited is using your celebrity status to promote ideas that hurt real people. What's mean-spirited is pretending to be this lovable underdog character while secretly harboring these controversial views. Alyssa Farah Griffin tried once more to redirect the conversation. I think there might be some miscommunication here. Sylvester, maybe you could clarify your actual positions so our viewers can understand where you're really coming from? Stallone turned to Alyssa with genuine appreciation in his eyes. Thank you, Alyssa. That's exactly what I've been trying to do. I believe in bringing people together, not dividing them. My movies have always been about second chances, about fighting for what's right, about never giving up on the American dream. Oh, spare us the movie speech, Joy interrupted rudely. We're not talking about Rocky here. We're talking about real-world consequences of your political statements. Sarah Haynes looked increasingly distressed by her colleague's behavior. She glanced at the producers off-camera, clearly hoping someone would step in to end this disaster of an interview. Stallone's voice grew firmer, more authoritative. Joy, I've answered your questions. I've tried to have a respectful conversation with you, but you seem more interested in creating conflict than actually listening to what I'm saying. Maybe that's because what you're saying is garbage, Joy snapped, finally crossing the line that would seal her fate in this confrontation. The studio fell deadly silent. Even the cameramen seemed to pause in their work, shocked by the blatant disrespect Joy had just shown to one of Hollywood's most beloved figures. Whoopi's mouth fell open, while Sunny Hostin actually put her hand over her face in embarrassment. Stallone stood up slowly from his chair, his imposing 6-foot frame casting a shadow over the panel. When he spoke, His voice was quiet but carried the weight of decades of experience and hard-earned respect. "You know what, Joy? I came here as your guest. I came here with respect for this show and for all of you, but I will not sit here and be insulted by someone who clearly has no interest in having a real conversation." Joy, perhaps realizing she had gone too far, tried to backtrack slightly. "Look, Sylvester, I'm just doing my job here. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews." But Stallone was done. He began removing his microphone with deliberate, measured movements. "Tough questions are fine, Joy. I've been answering tough questions my whole career. But there's a difference between tough questions and personal attacks. There's a difference between journalism and bullying." Whoopi jumped up from her seat, panic evident in her voice. "Sylvester, please don't leave. We can work this out. We can have a civil discussion about whatever issues you want to address." Stallone paused, looking at Whoopi with genuine sadness. "Whoopi, I have nothing but respect for you and for most of the ladies on this panel. But I won't be disrespected like this, not by anyone." Joy, her face now red with both anger and embarrassment, made one final desperate attempt to justify her behavior. "This is ridiculous. I asked legitimate questions, and he's throwing a tantrum like a child." The audience erupted in boos directed at Joy. Several people shouted their support for Stallone, creating a cacophony that the show's audio engineers struggled to manage. Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to crawl under the table, while Sunny Hostin sat frozen in her chair. Stallone handed his microphone to a nearby production assistant and straightened his jacket. When he spoke again, his words carried the dignity and grace that had made him a beloved figure for generations of fans. "Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, I apologize that you had to witness this. You came here expecting to have a good time, and instead you got dragged into something ugly. That's not fair to any of you." The audience responded with thunderous applause and a standing ovation that lasted nearly a full minute. Joy sat in her chair, her earlier bravado now replaced by obvious discomfort as she realized how badly she had misjudged the situation. As Stallone began walking toward the exit, Whoopi made one last desperate plea. "Sylvester, please. We still have 15 minutes left in the show. We can start over, talk about your movies, anything you want." Stallone paused at the edge of the stage and turned back to face the panel. His expression was sad but resolute. "Whoopi, some things can't be undone. Some words can't be taken back. I wish you and your show all the best, but I won't be part of this kind of television." Joy, perhaps finally understanding the magnitude of her mistake, made a weak attempt at an apology. "Look, maybe I came on a little strong. Maybe we can just move past this and have a normal interview." But it was too late. Stallone shook his head slowly. "Joy, in 50 years in this business, I've learned that character is revealed in moments of pressure. Today, you showed yours, and I showed mine. I can live with that." As security personnel appeared to escort Stallone from the building, not because he was causing trouble, but as standard protocol for any guest leaving mid-show, the legendary actor maintained his dignity to the very end. He shook hands with the security guards, thanked the production crew he passed, and even stopped to take a selfie with a young intern, who asked politely. The cameras continued rolling as Joy sat at the panel table, surrounded by her visibly uncomfortable co-host. The audience continued to voice their disapproval, with many calling out supportive messages to Stallone as he disappeared from view. Whoopi attempted to regain control of the show, but the damage was done. In the space of just 23 seconds of heated exchange, one of Hollywood's most respected actors had been driven from the set by behavior that viewers across the country would spend the rest of the day discussing and condemning. The interview that was supposed to promote Stallone's latest project instead became a defining moment that revealed the true character of everyone involved. As the show cut to commercial break, one thing was crystal clear. Sylvester Stallone had walked away from the view with his reputation not only intact, but enhanced by his gracious handling of an impossible situation. The same could not be said for his antagonist, who would soon discover that picking a fight with America's favorite underdog was a battle she was destined to lose.